Now that we are officially halfway through the NFL season, it's time to talk ceilings. Not floors, not averages, but what realistically is the season-long outlook for each and every NFL team from what we've seen and what we know about these teams through the first half of the season. Now, instead of doing like a traditional power rankings video, we're going to be using a tier list to kind of break down kind of what I can expect from these teams going forward and how their seasons are ultimately going to finish. So before we get into it, just go ahead and break down the tiers. So starting at the bottom, top 5 picks. Obviously, this is the teams that are very, very bad, who are no threat to the playoffs and already looking towards the draft, and maybe even potentially who their next coach is going to be. The next tier we have is going to be no man's land. This is going to be your teams that are not going to be bad enough to get that elite draft capital, but realistically are not actually in the hunt for the playoffs at all. So they're kind of just in this weird, awkward purgatory zone of not really being good enough or bad enough to, I think, fully benefit from the season. Next up, we got the outside looking in. These are going to be the teams that I think are going to be kind of in the playoff race down towards the end of the season, but I think ultimately are probably going to end up falling just short. Early playoff exit. These are the teams that I think are going to make the playoffs, but are more than likely going to be a one and done, or maybe they'll win a wild card game and lose the divisional round. The next up, conference championship game. These are teams that I think are good enough to go on a deep playoff run, but have one or two flaws that I think are going to be a limiting factor from this actually being a Super Bowl contending roster. The Super Bowl contender tier goes without saying. There are teams that I think realistically will have a chance to play in the Super Bowl this season. And if you stick around towards the end, I'll go ahead and give you my Super Bowl prediction as well as of right now. But before we go ahead and get into it, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and go ahead and drop a comment down below if I'm too high or too low on your team, if I'm just a complete idiot overall. Go ahead, let me know. But we're going to be doing this in alphabetical order, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first team we're going to be discussing is going to be the Arizona Cardinals, and they're the perfect textbook example of no man's land. At 2-5, at this point, their margin of error in order to be even a playoff team is incredibly, incredibly thin. And when you're talking about a team that I think is lacking explosive talent on offense outside of Trey McBride, has a defense that has pockets of talent but isn't doing as good as you'd probably want them to, and an overall coaching staff that leaves a lot to be desired, like, I just don't see where this team is going to have the wins in the back half of their schedule in order to even get them in the playoff hunt. Because they still have to play Dallas, who has a great offense. They have to play Seattle, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Tampa, the Rams, Houston, the Bengals that are playing good. So like they have a lot of games that are not winnable. And at 2-5, they're way behind the 8 ball at this point. I don't know if they're going to be bad enough to be a top 5 pick. Like I do think they're going to be able to steal a couple of these games because they do have so much talent. But do I even think they have a chance to even kind of be in playoff contention? Not at all. And next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who is going to go ahead and throw them in no man's land. Apparently, this is just the bird zone. But the Atlanta Falcons, I don't know what to make of this team. They've came out and had some impressive performances. That win against Minnesota and Buffalo. Those were some pretty impressive defensive performances. But then you get performances like this against Miami, or how bad the San Francisco loss was, or even that Carolina loss earlier in the season. Like, this team just can't really decide if they want to be good or bad. Part of it comes down to inconsistencies with Michael Penix. One week he's amazing, one week he's barely a starting caliber quarterback. So at this point, at 3-4, do I really expect them to be in the hunt? Not really. Especially when their next 2 games are against New England and Indianapolis, who have been 2 of the best teams in the entire AFC. So we'll see how the Falcons season ends up panning out, but I think we're probably going to start having the conversation through the back half of the season if we need to move on from Michael Penix this offseason. Now, next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm actually going to put them in Super Bowl contender. So I know for a team that is 2-5, that is a crazy place to put them. However, if you look at their losses, Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City, those are 3 of the best teams in the NFL. And then you have Houston, which, Houston is still a very talented team who just has offensive struggles. And then even the Rams themselves are a really phenomenal team. So they've gone against a lot of good teams. Ultimately, they've lost, but now that they're starting to get players healthy, like they lost a lot of players through injury. Lamar's been out, Linderbaum's been out, Staley's been out, Hamilton missed games, Roquan Smith missed game, Marlon Humphrey, Jared Alexander, Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie, Matabuike. Like this team has gone through the absolute ringer of injuries, but now that they're kind of starting to get everybody back, I do think this team's really going to start heating up. If you look at their next month, they have Miami, Minnesota, Cleveland, and New York. So I think in a month, we're going to be looking at this team 6-5 and have zero worries at all. So if I'm going against a hot Baltimore Ravens team with Lamar Jackson playing to kind of get this team in the playoffs, I'm going to completely avoid them. Even in the playoffs, I don't really know if I want to go against them. So I do think the Baltimore Ravens are in a legit shot to go on a Super Bowl run as everybody starts getting healthy. Now, next up, we have the Buffalo Bills. They are one of the best teams in football. They do have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But I think they're capped due to Sean McDermott and this defense. The issue is Josh Allen is a phenomenal player, an absolute alien of a quarterback who's done a lot of good work to rescue this team and win them games that they should not have won. But if you look at their offense, outside of James Cook, I really don't care about any of their playmakers. So you're really relying on Josh Allen to play perfect. And I think you can have that scenario for Josh Allen where he goes on a heater and could carry this team to the playoffs. But ultimately, I just don't know if that matters with how bad this defense is. Like, does anybody expect 3 or 4 games of the Bills playing good defense? I don't even need great defense, but good defense. Like, I don't trust this Bills defense to limit anybody. And if you need Josh Allen to go out there and play hero ball every single week to win you a playoff game, he's going to make some mistakes. And ultimately, I think that's going to cost him from even having the potential to get to the Super Bowl, which sucks because Josh Allen is amazing and deserves to be in contention. But I just think with Sean McDermott, this team is capped. Now, next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, and we're going to go ahead and fill up no man's land. Now it's just becoming the NFC South or a bird team, apparently. The issue with the Panthers is this team, I still think, is just missing talent all across the board. The defense finally started playing better, and then they go against the Bills, and James Cook has 200 rushing yards on him. The offense starts playing better, and then Bryce Young will have a stinker of a game or get injured, and then you have someone like Andy Dalton who looked borderline unplayable last week. So where is this team going? I don't know. And the thing is, like, at 4-4, they're technically kind of in the playoff race. Am I expecting them at any way to actually get there? No. But if you look at their games up ahead, they get to play New Orleans twice. So I think that can get them to around 6 wins. But look in Green Bay, Atlanta, San Francisco, the Rams, Tampa twice, and Seattle. Like, no way this team is actually going to be in the playoff hunt at this point in the stage. If they were maybe 5-2 and had won one of these games against Arizona, or maybe they stole the game against, I don't even know, Jacksonville, whatever it is, then maybe they'd have a chance if they stole one of these games. But they're going to have to actively go and beat some really good teams to make the playoffs, and I just don't see that happening with this current roster. Now, next up, we have the Chicago Bears, and they're going right to, I'm going to put them in no man's land. I think this loss is going to be really, really huge for the Chicago Bears, because if we're sitting at 5-2, we're in the playoff picture. Now at 4-3, I'm starting to get worried. First of all, Caleb Williams is just not playing good football. He's had a couple of good weeks, but I think he's been poor more often than he's been great. And so I think we're going to have to start having the conversation of, do we move on from Caleb Williams? Because I don't think he can handle this Ben Johnson offense. The defense was finally playing better, but they were super, super turnover dependent. Now they go against the Ravens, don't get any turnovers, and look what happens. Tyler Huntley drops 30 on your head. So ultimately, bad performance this week. This is definitely a game that they're going to wish they had won. But as we look towards the back half of their schedule, they do have some winnable games. Maybe Cincinnati with how they're playing, that game's a toss-up. They should beat the Giants, should beat the Vikings, and then could beat the Cleveland Browns. But if you're looking at their schedule, they have Philadelphia, Green Bay twice, Detroit, San Francisco, Pittsburgh's still a good team. Like they have, I mean, between Philly, Green Bay, and Detroit, that's at least 4 losses. That's getting you to 7. If you win every other game, you're at least getting to 10 wins and in the playoff hunts. But with those other games, like I just don't trust Caleb Williams not to cost him a game. I'll go ahead and bump him up to outside looking in, because I think they'll at least get to round 7 or 8. But I don't think this team's actually going to be in the playoff hunt and be like a legit playoff team. Now, next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in the outside looking in as well. I think they would have a better chance of making the playoffs, just like I said about the Bears, if they didn't drop this week to the fucking New York Jets. Granted, with the whole Mangold passing, I think there was a little bit of just that energy in the air that helped kind of propel the Jets over this. But Cincinnati at 3-5, now you are facing an incredible uphill climb, and your defense is still bad. At least the Ravens are kind of starting to tighten up that side of the ball. The Cincinnati Bengals cannot stop probably a JV high school offense. Like everybody is going to go for 30 against them. So when you start looking against their schedule, this week against Chicago, I think it's going to be really big for both of these teams. I think whoever loses is definitely going to end up missing the playoffs. I think one of these team wins, they're going to be in the hunt, but we'll kind of see how that breaks out. But this defense still has to go against Baltimore twice. They have to go against Buffalo and New England. So I think that's 4 losses just from those games. And that's getting it to 9. So I think if they're able to steal one of those games and win out, there is a chance where they can backdoor a playoff spot. But I think this is going to be a couple of years ago with Jake Browning, when they had Jake Browning, where they're just going to fall a little bit short despite the best efforts of Joe Flacco. Now, next up, we have the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to go ahead and put them in this no man's land tier. It sucks because Myles Garrett is such a phenomenal football player. I think he is the best football player in the NFL right now. But he had a 5-sack performance against the New England Patriots, and they still allowed 30 points and lost by 20 points. Like, what else can you ask from your edge rusher than to get 5 sacks? So clearly this offense is just not good enough to hang or compete or be legit in the NFL. Maybe you can try out Shadur, but I think you're just inviting more chaos. I think Stefanski, you can let him finish out the season because it doesn't even matter at this point, but he needs to go. And if I'm Myles Garrett, dude, ask for a trade. Get out of there. You got the bag. Go try to win a Super Bowl because, I mean, you're going to be a Hall of Famer either way, so I guess it doesn't matter to you. But going forward, their schedule isn't horrible. That's why I have them in no man's land instead of top 5 pick. When you have an elite defense, and then you get to go against Jets, Titans, the Bears I'm not as scared about. I think this team can mess up the Steelers. Like, I think there is a world where Cleveland is going to get to maybe 5 or 6 wins and maybe avoid that top 5 pick, but they're kind of on that fringe just with how bad this offense is with Dylan Gabriel, with Flacco, with God, whoever you put there, it's going to be poor. Now, next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys, and basically everything I said about the Cincinnati Bengals, you can go ahead and copy paste. Great offense, bad defense, and just like the other 2 teams, the Bears and the Bengals in this tier, a super bad loss to have dropped. Now, I do have more faith in the Cowboys to still hang in the playoff picture, because this offense is so elite, but at 3-4-1, you're going to have to play pretty well. This defense, just like I said with the Bengals, probably could not stop a JV high school offense. Now, the good thing is they have more winnable games. Arizona, Vegas, Minnesota, who knows what they're going to be looking like, and Washington and New York. So that's basically 5 wins right there. If you're 8-1, you're going to be in that kind of playoff picture. But ultimately, I just don't trust this defense because they haven't been able to stop anybody. So we'll see if they're able to steal one of these games against Philly, KC, Detroit, or even the Chargers. Then I think they'll be kind of a lock as kind of a 7 seed. And probably in that early playoff exit tier. But as of right now, I think they're going to be on the outside looking in. And now the Denver Broncos. This is an interesting conversation of how far the Denver Broncos can go. Ultimately, I think I'm going to put them at the early playoff exit. So as a team, they have just won 5 games in a row. And I don't think anybody's talking about how good the Broncos are. I think everybody's talking about, oh, Bo Nix this, Sean Payton this, and like, I think there is truth to that. I am a Bo Nix believer. I do think he's a legit stud, top 16 quarterback. You can win a Super Bowl with him. But I do think you need a perfect surrounding cast around him. While I do like Cortland Sutton and then Dobbins has been really good this year, I don't know if I trust the other playmakers. And this defense hasn't quite had the fear factor that it maybe had last year. Like, they're still a great defense, but I'm not like scared of the Broncos defense. So without like a true elite defense, like the best defense in the league, and I think some kind of lackluster playmakers, I don't know if they're going to have the juice to go on a 3 or 4 gun playoff run. And as I said, Bo Nix has made some mistakes, so I don't know if he's just going to maybe get to one of these games and crap the bed against one of these elite defenses. So ultimately, I do think maybe they can get in 4 or 5 seed and steal the playoff game, but do I really expect them to make a conference championship or a Super Bowl? I just can't see them getting past the Ravens, even the Bills, or kind of some of these other teams in the AFC that we've yet to get to. So now next up, we have the Detroit Lions. Not much needs to be said. Super Bowl contender. They've had a few crappy weeks where this defense has gotten exposed against Green Bay and Kansas City. But outside of that, every other week, this offense has been legit. They've been amazing. They're the Lions. Bunch of talented playmakers, really good play calling, great culture. Not much else really needs to be said. Now we're talking about the Green Bay Packers. And before this Sunday night game, I probably would have put them in conference championship. But seeing how Jordan Love played against the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you get that version of Jordan Love, I think this team is borderline unstoppable. This defense is not elite. It's not like super, super scary like everybody thought it was going to be getting Micah Parsons. But if the offense is playing at this level and Jordan Love is playing at this level, you don't need them to be the best defense in the league. The Cleveland Browns, in order to win games, they need to hold teams to 10 points. The Packers, with how good this offense is, you can hold teams to 20, 24 points and realistically still expect to win pretty comfortably. So I think they are a legit Super Bowl contender at this point. The only issue is going to be, can Jordan Love sustain this level of play? Because he can be very inconsistent. But based on what I saw Sunday, this play calling with these diverse group of playmakers and Jordan Love playing like this, I really think this team has a legit shot of making a Super Bowl and contending. Now, next up, the Houston Texans. This is a very weird team to talk about because if you look at their losses so far this season, the Rams, Buccaneers, Jaguars, Seahawks. It's 4 really good teams, but their offense looked so miserable in every single one of those. Now, if you look at their 3 wins, 3 blowout wins, well, the San Francisco one wasn't really a blowout, but at least 3 2 or more score victories. But it was versus the Tennessee Titans, who everybody knows suck, versus the Baltimore Ravens, who are basically playing practice squatters all across the field. And now San Francisco, who's also started to lose everybody on their defense and almost everybody on their offense. So I don't really take a huge stock in any of those wins, but then it's hard to punish them for these losses, which were against really good teams. So it's kind of a weird conversation to have with them because they do have an elite offense or elite defense, but then a piss poor offense. So who really knows what this team is? I think this week against Denver is going to really put into perspective if this is a playoff team or if they're going to miss out. I'm going to put them in the outside looking in. At 3 and 4, I think they're really going to have to go on a hot streak to kind of stay in the playoff picture. They do have some winnable games against like Tennessee, Arizona, Vegas, etc. But they still have to play Indianapolis twice, have to play Buffalo, have to play Kansas City, have to play the Chargers, and you have to play Denver. So I think you're probably looking at least 5 losses there. So I think that means they're ultimately going to be on the outside looking in, but maybe they can go on a heater and find a way to squeak out a wild card spot. Now, next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts. This is such a weird conversation. Look, I've been high on Daniel Jones. Even back in his Giants days, I've always been a believer of Daniel Jones. So seeing him come to Indianapolis and play well, I'm not surprised. Seeing how dominant this team has suddenly become, really opened my eyes to how bad Anthony Richardson, but also just highlights how good Shane Steichen is as a play caller. Like, there are people that were legit saying that he's on the hot seat. Like, no, he is legit one of the best offensive minds in the league. Surprisingly, now that you're not getting bottom 5 quarterback play, or bottom 2 quarterback play, for being really honest, guess what? Now all these playmakers can produce, and that's helping the defense play better because now they're not in these crappy situations. They're not always on the field. And then Jonathan Taylor, he has more rushing touchdowns than 30 NFL teams. Only one, outside his own team, obviously, is the Buffalo Bills have more rushing touchdowns. But he's out rushing everybody. This offensive line is playing great. If Jonathan Taylor is able to stay healthy and finish out the season, I think LaDainian Tomlinson's touchdown record is on the line. And I think at this point, Jonathan Taylor is a complete lock to win Offensive Player of the Year. So go ahead and bet it now, because at some point, probably by like week 15, it's going to be like minus 10,000 odds. So go get it at whatever ridiculous number it is probably now. It's probably minus 340 or something at this point. But Jonathan Taylor, the way he's playing right now, the way this offense is moving the ball, who knows who can actually stop them? You know, they haven't gone against any true elite teams. They did play the Rams, and they ended up losing that one. And so it's hard to know what is kind of legit for them. But at least these bad teams that they're playing, they're not squeaking by. They're beating the brakes off these teams and absolutely boat racing them. So at this point, I'm going to say they're a Super Bowl contender. I think they have enough dynamic playmakers on the front. I really don't know who can stop Jonathan Taylor. This defense is doing enough. Daniel Jones is playing great, and Shane Steichen, I think, is one of the best offensive minds and play callers in the league. I think this week against Kansas City and Houston, I think those are going to be important weeks, week 12 and week 13, to see if this is a legit Super Bowl contender, or if maybe we need to drop them down to conference championship or early playoff exit. But as of right now, through 8 weeks of football, if you didn't know anything about football and just watch these teams play, they've been the best team in the entire NFL. Now, next up, we have Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm going to go ahead and throw them in the outside looking in tier with the Houston Texans in the AFC South there. Ultimately, I don't believe in Trevor Lawrence, and that's what I think is holding them back. I think on the offense, they still don't have a great group of playmakers. You know, they kind of got Travis Hunter going a little bit, but Brian Thomas, I don't know if he's all in his head. He's got the yips or kind of what's going on there. And this defense was kind of playing good to start off the beginning of the season, but I think the last couple of weeks have not played so good. But if you look ahead at their schedule, I mean, they do have a good schedule. It's not super hard, so they could kind of end up stealing a playoff spot. I just don't know if I trust the talent enough for me to actually predict that. But on the bright side, I do think Liam Cohen's done a great job, so at least he probably finally nailed the coaching position. And now that you got rid of Trent Baalke, now you can actually start having better players on your roster. But we'll kind of see going forward how this team is going to be. I ultimately do think with Trevor Lawrence, I just don't expect this team to ever really have a chance of competing for a Super Bowl or even the AFC title and getting to the Super Bowl. Next up, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. They're back, dude. They're back. Mahomes is playing great football with Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Juju, Hollywood, Pacheco, Kelsey, Gray, Kareem Hunt. Like, this team is just spreading the ball all around. They're getting great production from everybody, and their offense is just able to keep moving the ball, keep putting points on the board, and this defense is playing great football. So you already have a great defense and an offense that's the best it's looked in the last couple of seasons with the best quarterback in the NFL. Yeah, this team is a Super Bowl contender. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. Now, next up, the LA Chargers. Going to go ahead and put them in the early playoff exit. Look, the first month of the season went really good for them, but then they kind of started sustaining injuries, and we've seen their overall level of play just drop off. My issue is I don't trust Justin Herbert enough to go on a deep playoff run, as well as with the holes on this team. I just think they've lost too many players. You know, if we still had a healthy Rashawn Slater and, Joe Alt didn't miss those couple games and this team was just able to kind of dominate on the line of scrimmage, I'd feel better. But this defense has been not looking as great. They did just have a good game against Minnesota, but everybody's having good games against Minnesota. Maybe that's kind of just a fluke. So we'll see. But based on like what the Colts did to them, I think this team is going to start getting really beat up by the good teams and be able to beat up on the bad teams. And when it comes to the playoffs, I just don't know if they're going to be able to go on a run, especially when you talk about the Chiefs, Colts, Ravens, Bills. Like, I don't see them getting through those games to even get to the conference championship. Now, next up, we have the LA Rams, and I'm going to put them in the conference championship game. They haven't really done anything wrong to not be a Super Bowl contender. So maybe it's just a gut feeling, or maybe because I like them, I'm being overly harsh on them. I don't really know, but I mean, Puka's had an amazing start to the season. Hopefully he's going to be healthy coming off the bye and he can continue. Devontae Adams, still a beast. Kyron Williams is playing well. This defense is still able to make some stops and has some talent. So on paper, they have the recipe to get to the Super Bowl. I also didn't mention Sean McVay is still one of the top 3 head coaches in the NFL. So on paper, everything is there for them to go on a Super Bowl run, but I just think some of these other teams, I think, just have a little bit more talent, and so it's just going to come down to Matthew Stafford, who is prone to playing or making mistakes. So if he can kind of do what they did the year they won the Super Bowl and go on a heater down the stretch, then yeah, this could be a Super Bowl contending team. But as of right now, I just don't really know if I see them making it to the Super Bowl and winning. I think their kind of ceiling is probably going to be losing the championship game. And next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, and we're just going to throw them in the top 5 pick tier. Look, they've been bad. Pete Carroll is doing a horrible job setting the culture and fixing this team. Geno Smith is looking horrible. Like, he has not been this bad in Seattle. I don't know what's going on. They haven't been able to get Genty going very well because his offensive line's been so poor. Brock Bowers has been out. I think Amari Cooper retiring was probably an indication of how things were going to go. He had a couple practices and was like, nah, I'm not doing this. So yeah, no, they've been legit bad. This defense is still not stopping anybody. Like, at this point, where they're going, like, I think we need to move on from Geno, move on from Pete Carroll, and restart, because neither of them are giving you nearly the contributions that you're expecting. At 2-5, their season's basically over. Then if you look at their upcoming schedule, they still have to play Denver twice, they have to play Philly, they have to play Houston and Kansas City and the Chargers. So I think this is going to be a team that's legit sitting around like 3 or 4 wins, and maybe they go quarterback, maybe they go somewhere else, who knows. Now, next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. I'm going to throw them in no man's land. It's so weird because this Dolphins offense is still playing good at points. The issue is everybody's kind of having their way with this defense outside of the Atlanta Falcons this week. But heading into the season, the entire talk of the town was Mike McDaniel needs to go, culture issues, stuff like this. But this team has not given up on Mike McDaniel yet, which I think is very, very impressive. And the way he's been able to kind of keep this offense still moving the ball and getting in these games, like, I think if I'm the Dolphins, I'm not moving on from him. Maybe they just need to do a fresh start, and maybe it is time to move on from him, but I personally wouldn't. If he ends up getting fired and losing his job here, if I'm almost every team in the league, I'm getting him on the phone instantly. Like, I think if you're in the Super Bowl contender conference championship game or early playoff exit, like, I think none of these teams are probably calling him, but any of these other teams outside of maybe Chicago or Dallas or Houston, I'm getting him on the phone, dude, instantly. Like, as soon as the tweet comes out that he's gotten fired, I'm getting him in there, because he, I think, is still a legit offensive guru and one of the best guys in the league. But at this point, 2-6, their season's basically over. I don't trust Tua to play flawlessly down the stretch, especially when you got Baltimore and Buffalo as your next 2 games. I think those 2 games are just going to officially eliminate them from the playoffs, and they still have to go against Pittsburgh, Cincy, Tampa, and New England. So ultimately, season's basically over, but at least I think Mike McDaniel, in my opinion, has done enough to keep his job. Now, next up, the Minnesota Vikings. This just starting to feel like a lost season, and I think we're at the stage where I don't know if we're worried about making the playoffs or going on a run. I think we're just strictly figuring out if McCarthy can play and if we need to move on from him. Because look, he's had what, 7 bad quarters of football. Outside of that fourth quarter against Atlanta, he has been kind of terrible all throughout. And then they went to Wentz, and he kind of gave them some higher low performances at time. But now that he's done for the season, let's just figure out if he can play or not. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are playing good. With Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, and Hawkinson, you have other good complementary pieces. But with bad quarterback play, a defense that has not been as elite as it was last year, I think we're not at this point even in contention for the playoffs. And at 3-4, looking ahead of their upcoming schedule, you still have to play Detroit and Chicago twice. You have to go against Baltimore, Dallas, Seattle. Like, they have an absolute gauntlet of a schedule coming up with Mike McCarthy and a bunch of injuries and already behind the 8 ball. Like, yeah, the season's over. This might even be like top 5 pick potential, but I think they have enough talent where I'm going to put them in no man's land, but it's strictly figure out what's going on with McCarthy. Now, next up, the New England Patriots, another one of the surprise teams in the NFL. To me, I'm not super surprised. Looking at this schedule at the beginning of the year, I saw it was a cakewalk, and I knew this team was going to be really good, especially with Mike Vrabel, Drake May, and Josh McDaniel. So the fact that they're 6-2 at this point is not a surprise to me. The fact that they've looked so amazing at 6-2 is a little bit surprising. Like, I thought this was going to be a no doubt playoff team, but I was not expecting this to be like a legit, like one of the best teams in the AFC. Do I think they're a Super Bowl contender though? I'm going to say no. With the way Drake May is playing, I'm definitely starting to get to the point of he's like a top 10 quarterback. Because if you're looking at just this season alone and no other games, he has been legit one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think the issue is I think this team is lacking the necessary playmakers to go on a playoff run. Like, I do not trust Ramondre Stevenson or Travion Henderson for 4 weeks to not cough up a fumble and cost him a game. You know, in the regular season, you can fumble the ball a couple times and get away with it. But if you're going against the Kansas City Chiefs and you fumble the ball, well, guess what? Now you're down 14 and having to play catch up versus that defense. I don't know if I believe that. And with Kayshon Boutte, Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, am I scared of any of that? No. So ultimately, I think we're definitely stock up on this defense, Drake May, Vrabel, McDaniel, the entire thing. I think this offseason, they really need to focus on the arms race and just bring in as much offensive talent and playmakers for Drake May. So that way you can actually get a little bit further and not need Drake May to win you every single game, or you're not expecting one of your playmakers to cough up the ball and cost you a game. Now, next up, we have the New Orleans Saints, who have just gone ahead and benched Spencer Rattler. At 1-7, their season's over. They were never even trying to make the playoffs in the first place to begin with. I do think Kellen Moore has done a good job of keeping this team playing hard and in a lot of these games, but this team is just lacking talent all across the board. So now that they're going to start Tyler Shook, that was announced today, we'll kind of see if he can play or what's going to be the deal there. At like 33 years old or however he is as a rookie, you would hope that he's going to come in and at least have a high floor. But we'll see. It's really going to be just figure out if he can play or not, and then tackle the offseason, see what we can do to improve this team. But definitely think Kellen Moore is doing a great job. I think that was a great hire. Good for them that he was willing to go down there. So now it's time to build a team in his image and see if we can, maybe 2028 be a Super Bowl threat. But 2025, definitely not happening. And the New York Jets, dude, I feel so bad, or the New York Giants. I feel so bad for the New York Giants. So they start the year with Russell Wilson. The fans are booing him, like everything's kind of not working good. They say, you know what, let's go to Jackson Dart. And then they got Jackson Dart and freaking Cam Scatabo, and the entire culture and energy of this team completely changed. And it's like, oh, this is legit. Jackson Dart is going to play well. Cam Scatabo, they're just raising the culture and energy of this team that was so flat and deflated. And it's like, oh, yeah, we're actually building something, and maybe we can actually go on a playoff run. Like, I was legit getting that point of, oh, the Giants are a playoff team. But unfortunately, too many mistakes and like fumbles. They ended up costing themselves that game against New Orleans. And then against Denver, an absolutely heartbreaking collapse. And I think that was the beginning of the end for this season, because I think that's just one of those demoralizing losses. And then this week against Philadelphia, Cam Scatabo dislocating his ankle. You could just see every Giants fan, player, everything just absolutely deflate. And it so sucks, because I think if Malik Neighbors and Cam Scatabo were healthy and everybody was playing with Jackson Dart, the energy of this team just feels so much better. And I really wish that they'd be able to justify giving Brian Daboll one last ride with his boys next season with everybody's healthy. I just don't know if they're going to give him that leeway. So ultimately now I think this is going to be the beginning of the end. Against San Francisco this week, I wouldn't be surprised if they get blown out and Brian Daboll gets fired. Like, I think just the entire energy of everything has just been let out of this team. So I think it's going to get really bad down the stretch. So I think this offseason, we're going to have a top 5 pick and probably be looking at our coach of the future, which really sucks, because I wish this team would be able to get it all guns firing. But fortunately, injuries happen. It's just part of the NFL. So now next up, we have the New York Jets. We don't need to say a whole lot. On the day of Nick Mangold's passing, or the day after, they were able to go ahead and rally together and play some good football and go ahead and win this game in his honor. So RIP Nick Mangold. But the New York Jets are just terrible in every single phase. They at least got the offense going this week with Justin Fields, but I think we're going to go right back to Justin Fields looking like the worst quarterback in the NFL. And then your defense with the defensive coach still can't really stop anybody. Going forward, do I expect them to win a whole lot of games? No. Their schedule is somewhat easy. You know, they got Miami, Jacksonville, New Orleans. So they got a couple of those games that are somewhat winnable. But no, this team just sucks. Top 5 pick. I think we're probably aiming quarterback or just talent all across the board. I don't even know at this point what you do. So now the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, I think now it's a very easy conversation. Super Bowl contender. I think at one point it was a little bit worrisome of what this team still is, but the last couple of weeks they've got the passing offense looking better. The defense is still playing great. Jalen Hurts is still playing great. They finally got Saquon back and going like he was last year. So Saquon's still playing amazing. If AJ Brown gets healthy, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, that's still a great trio of pass catchers. So there's absolutely no reason why this team can't still go ahead and compete for a Super Bowl. So yeah, that's simple enough. Pittsburgh Steelers, this is an interesting conversation because I think everybody is looking for a reason to blame Aaron Rodgers for this team's failures, but Aaron Rodgers is playing great football. I mean, definitely not like his prime MVP days, because he's not really, attacking the field vertically and stretching it vertically like he might have at one point of his career, but he's still playing good. He's not been the issue. The issue with this team has been the defense. This has not been a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that I'm used to at all. Like 32 points against the Jets, 33 against the Bengals, 35 against the Packers. Like, they're getting gashed. This team has absolutely no fear factor, because if this team had the elite defense that we're used to, and Aaron Rodgers just needed to go score 20 points every week, then yeah, this would be the classic Steelers formula, and they would be a good team. But if you're expecting Aaron Rodgers to win a bunch of these shootouts at this stage in his career with DK Metcalf and a whole lot of nobody, basically, like, that's just not going to happen. Based on what we know from the Steelers, their brand of football, and kind of how they operate, do I think they're going to miss it in the playoffs? No, I think they're going to find a way, but I think this probably needs to be the last year of Tomlin. I think they're probably going to end up promoting somebody like they want to do. I think everybody's been expecting it to be Terrell Austin, but I kind of think they might promote Arthur Smith to their head coach. So I'm saying that first. Go ahead and hear that now from the 300 Bandits. I think Arthur Smith is going to actually end up being the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we'll talk about that if and when it happens, but I think at this stage, they still have enough talent and still going to play Pittsburgh Steelers football and probably make the playoffs. But am I expecting them to go on any sort of run? Not at all. Now the Seattle Seahawks. This is an interesting one. I got into it with the Seahawks fan because he kept getting mad that I was saying this team is kind of overrated. And it's true. They're a little bit overrated. They've had a fairly easy schedule to start off the year. This offense has not looked spectacular. Well, it hasn't looked elite. It's been really good. JSN is playing like one of the best wide receivers in football. Kenneth Walker is doing good when they actually want to give him the ball. I mean, Charbonnet is still a good running back, but I just don't know if this offense has the firepower to go on a Super Bowl run, even with how good Darnold is playing. Like, I think last year in Minnesota was not a fluke. He is a legit starter and good NFL quarterback. The issue is, I think this defense is kind of overrated. Like, they're fine. Like, they're a good defense, and they can beat up on bad teams. But Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers were able to drop 38 points on him. So I think as they start going against some of the elite offenses, they can be exposed. The issue with this team is they don't really go against any elite offenses. They do have to play Indianapolis and the Rams twice. So I think those are going to be good litmus tests to see how legit this team is. But I think they're just going to get to beat up on, they get to play Washington, Arizona, Tennessee, Minnesota, Atlanta, Carolina, and then San Francisco week 18. Who even knows who's going to be healthy for that team then? So, like, this team is just going to beat up on a bunch of bad teams and look really good. But I think just like last year's Minnesota Vikings, they're going to get to the playoffs, start facing some legit competition, and turns out they're not as good as we think they are. Like, let's be honest, everybody. Can y'all see the Seattle Seahawks beating at least, in order to get like to the Super Bowl, you're gonna have to beat at least 2 of the 4 between the Lions, Packers, Eagles, Rams. Is anybody seeing that happen? I don't. So as of now, I think they're going to be kind of a first round exit team. Now, next up, the San Francisco 49ers. I really don't know where to put them. So as of right now, they are currently still in the playoff hunt. Unfortunately, they are losing every single person that has a pulse on this roster. And at some point, you can only do so much when everybody keeps getting injured and when you're not a great drafting team, but we won't get into that now. But when you have Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh, like, they're doing phenomenal jobs coaching on their respective sides of the ball. The issue is eventually talent does matter. Like, coaching is important, but at some point, if you just don't have enough talent, you're not going to be able to compete. But at 5-3, they've set themselves up to be in a good position. They still have games against New York, Arizona, Carolina, and Cleveland, and Tennessee. So I think that should be at least 4 wins there. So I think they are going to end up making the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to have the firepower at this point to actually go on a run. So I think they're realistically going to be a first round exit. I think they could steal a wild card game, but I don't really see this team even making it to the conference championship. Now, next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are honestly an early playoff exit too. I think everybody is ready to say conference championship, Super Bowl, MVP. Look, every single game the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have played in, they've been playing with fire except for this one with New Orleans. Or even, I guess, the Detroit one where they got their ass kicked. But for most of the games, Atlanta, Houston, the Jets, they started playing with fire. And then they start going against some of these more legit Super Bowl contender teams like the Eagles and the Lions. And guess what? You can't keep making those mistakes and still stay in games. So against, a crappy Texans offense or against the New York Jets, you can make a bunch of mistakes and have Baker Mayfield go on and, make these clutch plays at the end and you still win. But in the playoffs against these elite teams, your margin for error becomes razor thin. And I think this team is just too prone to making mistakes. So do I see this team going on a run and playing mistake-free football? No. Can they win a wild card game or maybe have a first round bye and go to the divisional round? Yes, but do I see Baker Mayfield playing in a Super Bowl? No. And the issue is, it's not even Baker Mayfield. I love Baker Mayfield. I've been a Baker Mayfield truther since he was in Carolina, or even in Cleveland. I was saying he was not the problem there. I was way, way high on him. I think the issue is other players and other things around him, not Baker Mayfield. Let me just make that clear. But yeah, I think this team is just a clear for one and done, if I'm being entirely honest. Tennessee Titans top 5 pick. They're the worst team in the NFL. I legit am at the point where I think Ohio State football could beat this team in a game. Like, it's legit bad. Like, we need to add relegation if the Tennessee Titans are not going to fix their entire roster, because they're absolutely miserable. There is not a single thing going right for this Titans team. Like, let's be honest. There is not a single thing going right for this team, except maybe they've got Shim DK and Io Manor playing good or okay even. But every single thing. Cam Ward sucks. Offensive line still sucks. They can't run the ball, can't pass the ball. Defense sucks. Everybody's putting up a bunch of points against them. So yeah, Tennessee, they're horrible. And now last up, we have the Washington Commanders. I'm going to go ahead and throw them in no man's land. Heading into the season, I was high. I thought Jaden Daniels was good. I think they added in some good talents and had a chance to be kind of replicate what they did last season. Because, I mean, Daniels was legit playing at a near elite level. He was playing really, really well. But this year started off a little bit slow and then started picking up some injuries. And now at this point, at 3-5, I just don't know if they're going to have the room to make any more or to lose any more games or make any more mistakes. Because if you look at their schedule up ahead, I mean, it's a gauntlet. You got Seattle and Detroit, which we don't even know if Daniels will fully be back for those games. They still got to play Denver, and then you end the season Philly, Dallas, Philly. So I think between those games, you're probably getting to kind of like 9 or 10 losses, which sucks because I think Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn did some really amazing things last year. And even this year, I don't think that they've been at fault. I think just a little bit of drink too much of their own Kool-Aid, try to buy in a little bit too much, and they haven't been getting the same play from some of these guys as they were doing last year. So ultimately, I think if they could rebuild stronger this offseason, I think we can talk about the Commanders as still being a playoff team next year. But ultimately, I think this is just going to end up kind of being a lost season in the career of Jaden Daniels. So now it's time to kind of break down potential Super Bowl matchups and then who I ultimately think is going to win the Super Bowl. So we'll start on the NFC side. So as I said, it's between Detroit, Green Bay, and Jalen Hurts. All of these teams are pretty good on both sides of the ball. They have a lot of talent. Now, where I'm leaning is... Oh man, now my gut is kind of changing. So I guess when it comes to coaching and culture, I think Detroit has the best overall culture. When it comes to offensive play calling, a little bit more specifically, I'm going Green Bay. When it comes to defensive coaching, I'm probably going Philadelphia. So between those three, I think that somewhat ends up as a wash. When it comes to quarterback play, as of right now, Jordan Love has the highest highs of these three. So if you pair what I think is potentially the best quarterback with potentially, or what is the best play caller, with a Packers defense that is playing very, very well, I think at this point they may be my Super Bowl. That doesn't feel right in my gut either. I'm going to do the Eagles. Look, this team clearly is losing Kellen Moore from last season, but I just think they just have so much more talent than anybody else in the league. And between these three teams, I think I trust their defense the most. So I think we're going to see the Eagles in another championship game. Yeah, I think that feels the best in my gut. I think Green Bay is probably number 2 for me, and Detroit's number 3 for me. And now the AFC side of the ball, between Indianapolis, Kansas City, and Baltimore. I still don't know if I'm ready to trust Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson in the playoffs just yet. But if they're getting hot, that's why I'm saying they could be a Super Bowl contender. But between, as of right now, I ultimately think it is between Indianapolis or Kansas City of who the best team in the AFC is. At the end of the day, Shane Steichen versus Andy Reid, two top 5, top 7, offensive minds. So that's kind of a wash. I do think that the Colts have better playmakers, but I think the ultimate tiebreaker is Patrick Mahomes. So as boring as it is, I think we're at the position where we're going to have a Super Bowl rematch of last year. The difference this year is I think Kansas City is playing much better, and I'm not sure about the Eagles coaching. So I think Kansas City Chiefs, as boring as it sounds, are probably the best overall team in the NFL and the team I have the most faith in to win the Super Bowl. So with that being said, those are my final rankings for every NFL team and how far I think they realistically have a chance of going this entire season. So with that being said, go ahead and comment, go ahead and give us a subscribe. Just let me know what your thoughts are. Which teams am I too high on? Which teams am I too low on? And go ahead and stick around because we got a lot more NFL content coming towards your way for the rest of the season. Thank you so much for watching.